Every legend is born from a wound. Candyman is not just an urban myth, but a spectre shaped by hatred and injustice. They say all it takes is repeating his name in front of a mirror to summon him. But before becoming a vengeful spirit, he was a man. Daniel Robitaille, a talented artist who dared to love in a time when loving the wrong person meant blood and death. Daniel was born in 1870, son of a formerly enslaved man who gained wealth through an invention in the leather industry. Unlike many black men of his time, he grew up surrounded by rare opportunities. Intelligent and sensitive, he stood out as a painter, sought after by the white elite to portray their heirs on canvas. Yet his rise concealed invisible cracks. Despite his talent, Daniel was never accepted as an equal. His skin color in a segregated America was a constant reminder of his difference. While his hands delicately painted aristocratic faces, many saw him only as a tolerated intruder. This contrast between admiration and prejudice became the fuel for a tragic fate. It was during one of those commissions that his life changed. Daniel was hired to paint the portrait of a wealthy landowner's daughter. The young woman, fascinated by his delicate artistry and the attention he gave her, drew closer each day. What began as a simple portrait soon became a forbidden romance, a love that defied cruel conventions. The secret relationship blossomed in hiding, exchanged letters, secret garden meetings, lingering gazes during painting sessions. But what was passion to them was an unforgivable crime to society. The young woman became pregnant, and the news spread like poison. For the elite, ashamed, only one thing was demanded: punishment. The girl's father, consumed by rage and shame, gathered a mob to hunt Daniel down. He was dragged from his home, accused of dishonoring the family. There was no trial, only vengeance. The crowd demanded blood, and the violence that followed was designed to be slow, cruel, and exemplary. His right hand was brutally severed, replaced with a rusty hook to prolong his agony. But the cruelty did not stop there. The mob smeared his body with honey, attracting swarms of bees that stung him until the pain was unbearable. Daniel's screams merged with the endless buzzing. Death did not come quickly. Daniel agonized, surrounded by cruel laughter and applause, as honey and blood dripped from his shredded skin. His body was left to rot in public, a silent warning that crossing racial boundaries would be paid in flesh. In that moment, not just a tragedy was born, but a myth. Soon after, stories began to spread. People claimed Daniel's spirit would not rest. His cries echoed on hot nights, accompanied by the distant hum of bees. Some swore they saw a tall figure with torn flesh and a hook where his hand once was. Fear began to crystallize into legend. Decades later, the name Candyman emerged. The word, both ironic and cruel, recalled the honey used in his execution. Summoning him in front of a mirror became a daring ritual among youths. But what seemed like mere folklore had roots buried deep in history. A wronged man, transformed into an eternal curse by human cruelty. As years passed, the name Candyman became synonymous with fear. In urban ghettos, parents warned children not to play with mirrors or speak his name aloud. The myth grew, fed by silence and collective terror. Yet behind the legend remained forgotten records of his cruel death, hidden in dusty archives. Period documents reported the lynching. Newspapers described the punishment as community justice, omitting the true brutality. Historians argue this omission was part of the era's pact, disguising barbarity as morality. Daniel's name was erased, replaced with a ghost story that would never rest. Curiously, ghostly accounts surfaced soon after the crime. Workers swore they heard metallic footsteps in empty barns, like a hook scraping the floor. Women claimed to see distorted reflections in windows, even when alone. Daniel's figure seemed to return, wrapped in vengeance, haunting the living. Through the 20th century, the summoning ritual spread. Teenagers dared each other to repeat Candyman 5 times before a mirror, proving their courage. Many thought it a game, yet tales of vanishings and unexplained deaths soon surrounded this macabre practice, blurring myth with reality. Police investigations in the 1950s and 1960s uncovered disturbing patterns. Victims found in bathrooms, shattered mirrors, bodies slashed as if by a hook. No evidence ever tied to a culprit, but the rumor persisted. Someone had dared to call Candyman. The legend became part of crime reports. In the 1970s, folklore researchers analyzed the myth. They discovered Candyman was more than horror. He embodied America's racial scars. A vengeful spirit, yes, but also a cultural symbol, representing collective memory of injustice, preserved not in history books, but in whispers and fear. Testimonies from impoverished neighborhoods showed a pattern. The harsher the inequality, the stronger the Candyman myth. For some, he was an avenger of the oppressed. For others, a demon feeding on suffering. This duality made him powerful, both feared and strangely revered. Hospital records reinforced the terror. Survivors of summoning games described the same vision: a tall man in a dark coat, honey dripping from his mouth, bees swarming from his wounds. Science dismissed it as mass hallucination, yet the survivors swore it was no dream but encounter. The cruel nickname Candyman eventually became a curse. Its exact origin is unclear, but scholars suggest it stems from necromantic rituals merged with African American superstitions carried over from slavery. The mirror became a gateway, linking superstition to lingering trauma. The legend endured. Each generation added details: the bloody hook, the swarm of bees, the mirror as a portal. But at its core remained Daniel Robitaille, the man whose life was stolen by hatred, whose soul never found peace. Candyman is not only supernatural, he is historical, social, and terrifyingly human. In the 1980s, the Candyman myth grew stronger in communities like Cabrini Green in Chicago. The area, plagued by violence, poverty, and neglect, became the perfect stage for the legend's rebirth. Residents reported hearing buzzing at night and seeing shadows near shattered mirrors in dark hallways. A 1983 police report described a young woman found dead in her bathroom. The mirror was shattered, her abdomen slashed open. No forced entry. Neighbors swore they heard faint laughter and metallic scraping hours before. The name Candyman was whispered, but never recorded in the official report. Folklore researchers interviewed entire families living under Candyman's shadow. Many refused to say his name, convinced that even speaking of him might attract his presence. The silence around the myth resembled religion, a sacred law passed from parents to children, generation to generation. Some scholars suggested the legend functioned as social metaphor. The mirror, symbol of identity, reflected the unseen wounds left by segregation and poverty. Candyman was more than a ghost. He was a distorted reflection of structural violence, forever etched into the collective psyche. Yet for those who swore they saw him, such theories fell short. A 47-year-old woman claimed she encountered him in her bedroom mirror. She described an icy chill, then the sound of bees. The vision left her traumatized for years. For her, Candyman was not a symbol. He was real. Hospital archives in Chicago list cases with chilling similarities: deep curved wounds, infections from countless bee stings, even sudden deaths with no cause. To doctors, coincidence. To residents, these were signatures of Candyman, hidden in plain sight within medical records. What intrigued most investigators was the timing. In many cases, victims had recently participated in mirror rituals. The connection between superstition and tragedy was undeniable. The myth not only frightened, it shaped behavior, fueling collective paranoia impossible to dismiss. Candyman became a hybrid entity, part myth, part social warning, part inexplicable reality. His name circulated in films, songs, and books. Yet in the neighborhoods where he was born, he remained something else entirely, a living threat, walking the shadows between history and horror. In 1992, the myth went global with the film Candyman. Many thought it exploited an urban legend, but researchers argue the script drew from real testimonies, archived cases, and ignored voices. Cinema merely gave form to what already lived in the underground memory of the people. Strangely, after the film's release, sightings surged, as if exposure had reawakened the entity, reviving him through attention. Across cities, similar reports emerged: shattered mirrors, hook-shaped wounds, swarms of bees appearing from nowhere. The legend was alive, and it was evolving. By the 1990s, independent journalists began investigating the legend. In marginalized neighborhoods, Candyman was not just a horror tale, but part of daily culture. Children were warned never to play with mirrors, and even churches delivered sermons warning against the vengeful spirit of honey. In 1995, a case shocked Chicago police. A teenager vanished after recording himself attempting to summon Candyman. The camera was found on the floor, capturing only silence and faint buzzing. The boy's body was never found. For his family, the answer was clear: the ritual had worked. Other episodes followed across different states. Teens missing from public restrooms, hook-shaped marks carved into concrete walls, bee swarms invading sealed apartments. Authorities blamed urban crime or natural causes, yet the pattern was undeniable. The myth moved like a shadow. Paranormal researchers described Candyman as an egregore, a spirit born from collective fear. The more people believed, the stronger he became. Daniel Robitaille's soul, they claimed, transcended his personal tragedy, evolving into a myth fed by generations of terror and injustice. In the 2000s, investigative reports linked the legend to unsolved crimes in Detroit, New Orleans, and Los Angeles. In every case, details matched: mirrors shattered, bodies slashed by a hook-like weapon, insects swarming in closed rooms. The myth seemed to migrate, spreading like a plague. Witnesses consistently described Candyman the same way: a tall man in a dark coat, hollow eyes, honey dripping from his mouth, bees crawling from open wounds. First came the chill, then the sweet smell, and finally the buzzing swarm. To skeptics, it was hallucination. To witnesses, memory. A 2003 academic study analyzed 40 testimonies of alleged encounters. Nearly all victims suffered trauma: insomnia, paranoia, mirrorphobia, panic attacks. Most chilling of all, though none of them knew each other, their descriptions of Candyman were almost identical, down to the hook and bees. By 2010, medical reports documented bizarre injuries: multiple bee stings without hives nearby, bodies found dead in bathrooms surrounded by glass shards. To doctors, unexplained anomalies. To believers, these were Candyman's marks, proof he had never faded, only grown stronger. Candyman became a presence that crossed generations. Parents instilled fear, children repeated rituals, and the cycle fed itself. Each death, each sighting, each whispered name nourished his existence. Born from racial hatred, he transformed into a curse that refuses to vanish. At the core lies one truth: behind folklore stands a real man. Daniel Robitaille existed. His torture was documented, his death undeniable. The vengeful spirit we call Candyman may be symbol, myth, or entity, but his roots are buried in blood, racism, and the darkest chapters of American history. Over a century later, Candyman still lives in the collective imagination. No matter how many experts dismiss him as superstition, his name echoes through broken mirrors and whispered testimonies. It's as if the injustice that created him became an open wound that refuses to heal. Historians argue the myth is a brutal reminder of racism and violence shaping American society. Candyman is more than terror. He is memory. Each time his name is spoken, Daniel Robitaille's story is revived. The man punished for love in a time of hate. Even today, young people test the mirror ritual, thinking it only a game. Yet unexplained disappearances persist. Bodies found with hook-shaped slashes fuel the belief that summoning Candyman was never harmless. For many, the ritual is not a dare, it's a death sentence. Psychologists call it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Fear so intense, it triggers hallucinations, shock, even death. But science cannot explain the bee swarms appearing from nowhere, identical wounds across victims, or the icy chill that precedes every reported encounter. Cinema only strengthened his image. Each film reignited fear, spreading his name to millions. The more attention he received, the more alive he seemed to become. Candyman thrives on memory, on voice, on belief. To speak of him is to give him breath. Occult scholars claim the mirror works as a portal, not to another world, but to human psyche itself. Calling Candyman awakens the collective shadow, summoning vengeance rooted in trauma. What returns is not only Daniel's ghost, but the darkness society tried to bury. The myth endures because it holds two unbreakable forces: fear and memory. Fear of what lurks beyond death, and memory of historical violence. Candyman is both personal and collective, supernatural and social, a curse built on wounds that still bleed in silence. Some say ignoring him is the only way to weaken him. Don't look in mirrors, don't say his name, don't feed him attention. But how do you silence a ghost that is also history? Candyman is not just summoned, he is remembered, and remembrance cannot be erased. Whether metaphor, spirit, or curse, Candyman remains one of the most disturbing legends of modern folklore. His origin lies in Daniel Robitaille's blood, his presence in shadows and mirrors, his future in every whisper that dares to call him back. In the end, one question remains. Is Candyman only an urban legend, or proof that hatred survives death? Perhaps both. But one thing is certain. Before the mirror, when you whisper his name, you summon more than a ghost. You summon centuries of pain, vengeance, and darkness. And maybe, just maybe, he is listening.